Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Delano D'Souza. Coming up on the show this week. As the Lebanese economy continues to crumble, tens of thousands are forced to fend for themselves as the country faces a shortage of medicine. Lawyers call on the International Criminal Court to open an investigation into war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. And a government-backed dating app in Iran is off to a successful start. It's part of the Islamic Republic's effort to curb the rising age of marriage. But first, the economic situation in Lebanon continues to worsen. Foreign currency reserves remain low in the country and shortages of fuel and medicine continue. Drug shortages threatening the treatment of tens of thousands of people, pushing some to space out their medication, doing whatever they can to survive. Sally Farat and Zaina Antonios report.
Empty shelves and long queues in front of pharmacies. As Lebanon's economic crisis deepens, citizens face drug shortages, including those for chronic illnesses. Karin was lucky to find her mother's prescribed breast cancer treatment, but she's not sure how long the medicine will remain accessible.
I just passed the prescription to the pharmacist who told me the medicine would be available this month. We have the treatment covered for the next few weeks, but for next month we're not sure.
Karin is not the only one struggling. Many are leaving pharmacies empty-handed, while others have to wait days before they find their much-needed medication.
Some people are skipping their drugs for 4 or 5 days. This is not recommended for a person with diabetes or hypertension. Any slight increase in tension can result in a heart attack or hemiplegia.
Fadia was recently diagnosed with leukemia. She was only able to start her treatment because her friends abroad are sending her the needed medication.
If I don't take the specialized chemo treatment which targets my cancer, I will die. I need to take this treatment for 5 consecutive years. But it's just not available in Lebanon anywhere.
Getting sick and struggling to find drugs is now part of any citizen's daily life. As Lebanon's economy further collapses, the Lebanese have no one to rely on except themselves.
Now, Turkey says it won't be able to shoulder a migrant influx and is reinforcing its border wall with Iran to prevent a potential surge of Afghans fleeing Taliban rule. For that story and more from around the region, here's Peter O'Brien.
Meeting his German counterpart, the Turkish foreign minister insists Turkey cannot take in another large wave of migrants.
We, Turkey, have adequately fulfilled our moral and humanitarian responsibilities. It's no longer possible for us to carry an additional refugee burden.
5 years ago, Turkey agreed to host people fleeing the war in Syria in return for billions of euros from the EU for refugee projects. It currently hosts more than 3.5 million Syrian refugees, as well as around 300,000 Afghans. Turkish authorities are reinforcing the border with Iran to stop Afghans entering there, extending a wall by 64 kilometers before the end of the year. Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz has met Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas for a rare high-level meeting between the two sides. A source close to Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, however, insisted it was not a sign that peace talks were in the pipeline. Bennett, who is against Palestinian statehood, had just met US President Joe Biden, who reiterated his support for a two-state solution. A conflict in May between Israel and Palestinian militants in Gaza saw the worst hostilities in the area since 2014. Despite a ceasefire, unrest has persisted in the Gaza Strip. A missile and drone attack on Yemen's biggest airbase has killed dozens of troops in one of the deadliest single attacks of its civil war in recent years. The wounded were taken to a nearby hospital, many of them in critical condition. The base is held by Yemen's internationally recognized government, which is backed by a coalition led by Saudi Arabia.
Now, as the war in Yemen continues, lawyers representing hundreds of victims have called on the International Criminal Court to open an investigation into war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by the Saudi-led coalition. British lawyer Toby Cadman filed a request at the ICC on Monday, and we can speak to him now from The Hague. Good to have you with us here on Middle East Matters. Now, 20 separate incidents have been cited as examples of war crimes, but you've highlighted two. Can you talk us through them?
Certainly. First of all, I would say that we have, in the written submission to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, set out that there are over 20,000 separate airstrikes. And within that, we, as we say, have highlighted approximately 20 individual cases. We've set out, in particular, two attacks of some significance and have listed the victims from each of those attacks that number in several hundred. Those two attacks, one was on a school bus and one was on a funeral. Clearly, there was no military benefit, no military necessity in those attacks, and they're used as a way of setting out the nature of the majority of these attacks, and that they constitute war crimes or crimes against humanity, and those that are responsible for being part of the Saudi-led coalition should be held accountable.
But Saudi Arabia nor the United Arab Emirates are member states of the International Criminal Court, so how does this work exactly?
Well, that's right. I mean, the starting point is that the territory on which these crimes have been committed, Yemen is not a member of the International Criminal Court, and we know the International Criminal Court operates on a basis of voluntary membership. So either states agree to be bound, or matters can be referred by the UN Security Council. We know that that's not possible here. Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates are not state parties. But of course, the coalition is much wider than just the Saudis and the Emiratis. And there are a number of states who have played roles in supporting militarily, politically, and through other means the coalition. And many of those states fall within the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. And so we say that the court can exercise jurisdiction on that basis.
But how do you ensure then that Saudi Arabia and the UAE are held accountable, or do they get off scot-free here?
They certainly don't get off scot-free. One of the arguments that we are making in our submission is that each member of the coalition should be held accountable and should face prosecution if the evidence demonstrates that they are responsible. Of course, we recognise the limitations of the International Criminal Court, and so what we will almost certainly have to do is, one, seek from the prosecutor to apply a more expansive form of jurisdiction by virtue of what we say a common purpose plan, of which all members of the coalition are responsible, and the acts of one state are not indistinguishable from the acts of another state. If we face the situation where we are not able to get those senior political and military figures from Saudi Arabia and the UAE before the ICC, then we will, of course, take matters elsewhere by bringing cases in other jurisdictions, such as the United Kingdom and the United States.
I want to talk about those two countries because the Saudi-led coalition did receive logistical and intelligence support from the US, the UK, and France. The US isn't a member of the ICC, but the UK and France are. Does your filing point the finger of blame at these states in any way?
It does. And reference is, of course, made to the United States because we are aware of the use of mercenaries in the south of Yemen, in excess of 400 mercenaries from a number of different Latin American countries, the most significant being Colombia, were trained. The evidence shows that they were trained by a US private military company to be contracted to the United Arab Emirates. And there may also be involvement from US authorities. So we do set that out in some detail. We also make very clear reference to the role of the United Kingdom, not only in providing the military hardware by which to carry out these war crimes and crimes against humanity, but also the sharing of intelligence and providing of strategic guidance. We say that is a matter that the ICC will need to look into, and certainly the UK authorities will need to look into investigating themselves as to their role.
Indeed. Toby, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Toby Cadman. Next, the Islamic Republic of Iran is making a push for young Iranians to meet and get married through a government-sponsored dating app. It's part of the government's effort to curb the rising age of marriage and a declining birth rate. The app's developers say the platform is off to a successful start, but some in Iran remain skeptical. Reza Sarah reports.
Ever since she could remember, 27-year-old Parastu wanted to marry and start a family at a young age. But living in a mega city and growing up in a conservative family made things difficult.
In a huge place like Tehran, to find someone who matches your qualities and values, well, that's a very difficult thing to do.
So Parastu turned to Hamdam, Iran's first ever government-funded matchmaking app. Soon after came the wedding bells.
The fact that I met him and I found him in this crowded world made me very happy.
The government launched the Hamdam matchmaking app as part of an effort to increase what officials call stable and healthy marriages. Statistics show fewer young Iranians are getting married and having children. With the current state of Iran's struggling economy, many say they can't afford to get married. The outcome has been an aging population that Hamdam's developers hope to reverse.
The more a country's population ages and gets older, the more it takes away from its growth. This is a danger not just for Iran, but for all societies.
Zohre Hosseini is Hamdam's director. She says Hamdam, which means companion in Farsi, uses a scientific compatibility algorithm to match users with ideal partners. Hosseini says the app is based on Iran's Islamic norms and not a place for casual dating.
We launched this platform for marriage. Entertainment and amusement have no place in Hamdam.
Many bachelors say Hamdam could work, but they're not ready for marriage.
I like being single and pursuing my goals by myself.
With the current circumstances, I'm not in a position to get married.
Despite the skepticism, developers say more than 150,000 users have downloaded Hamdam, hoping to follow in the now happily wed footsteps of Parastu and her husband.
That's it for this edition of Middle East Matters. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.